What a crazy day here for markets. We got the FOMC, we got a bunch of earnings, and overall it was a down day, but you can see a bunch of wicks in both directions. We're falling a little bit here after hours. Let's take a look at all the charts and see if we can find some direction for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So big episode today. Let's get into all of the news we got. So the Fed held rates flat. We expected that. We talked about it. The Fed futures predicted nearly 100%, and that is what we ended up getting here at 4.25 to 4.5. This comes after 3 straight cuts since September of 2024. Again, this was the expectation. Everything was in line with what we expected. Usually, as rates start to come down, eventually you start to hit a turning point that becomes recessionary. A lot of people are talking about this here. Fed Powell even got asked about it during the session. Is this a 2008 crisis style move? Potentially, and he said absolutely not. We're not seeing any of the kind of conditions that led to that event. And I tend to agree with that. I think that's very, very fair. He said the labor market continues to be quite strong. The economy has continued to expand at a solid pace. So overall, bullish on the economy. Still no contact with Trump, still continuing to see what potential outcomes we get from the tariffs or any kind of economic changes. They haven't made any incorporation on that because they said they don't know what that's going to do to the economy quite yet, and they're waiting for more data on that. And then the big piece here was that inflation was lower, but not at the target. They said it continues to be kind of sticky here, which was a change from the previous comments where they said inflation continues to downtrend. But as we headed into this one, it did level out a bit, which makes sense. That's why the Fed rate ended up leveling out for this one. And based on the probabilities, traders are not looking for another cut until June, July, and we've talked about that many times on the channel. And then with the earnings, Microsoft shares did go down a little bit. They did exceed the consensus, but the forward guide was a little bit disappointing. Azure didn't do as good due to ongoing supply shortages. That makes sense. And you can see here down about 5.5%. Microsoft not doing so good, tumbling as much as 5%. Earnings per share, good. Revenues also very good. But like I said, forward guide, not good. Cloud growth, not good, which is their highest margin business, jumping 31% down from 33%. And like I said, this was due to shortages. Concerned about getting chips on time, building out this infrastructure here. Overall, pretty good result, but not enough to keep the stock from falling about 5.5%. Moving over to Tesla. Tesla was also disappointing on their revenue miss, dropping 8% there, but not as bad as people thought, and it was actually up 4%. Interesting. Again, stocks can do whatever they want to do pretty much whenever they want to do it here. You can see 73 cents missed on earnings versus 76 on the expectation, missed on revenue, increasing just 2% from a year earlier. Revenues fell 8% to 19.8 versus that 21.56 from the same quarter last year. So not great. Nearly 700 million of that coming from regulatory credits, which if you have been paying attention to the news, that's potentially going away. And then you got operating revenues declining 23% year over year, net income dropping 71% to 2.32 billion or 66 cents. Of course, this was bolstered by that one-time non-cash tax benefit. So that was a little bit of a fake data there. You can see it here, but overall, not a super great indicator for Tesla going forward, at least for the current. Of course, you're not buying Tesla for the current numbers if you're still buying Tesla at these prices, but so far not so good. And then you can see hefty discounts on the EV side, especially with the Model Y and the new refresh. And really, if you're buying Tesla, you can see you're really buying this for power generation, power storage, other services. Automotive revenues have been pretty flat to declining now for more than a year. And lastly, here you have Meta doing better than expectations, beating on every metric, up about 2%, 1.75% or so, continuing to do well. Earnings per share, massive beat. Revenues also beating massively. Sales jumped 21%. Again, very, very strong growth there for this massive company. They did mention DeepSeek, and they are concerned about that. Absolutely. There's been some commentary about these major companies trying to figure out how they can combat this large language model, especially for the prices that they're paying here. You still have Meta Reality Labs losing a bunch of money, and in the current quarter, about 5 billion, which is more than any other quarter here, you can see. But people are not so worried about that, at least for now, as long as the rest of the company continues to do exceptionally well, which seems to be the case here for Meta. Now moving over to Fear and Greed Index, you can see 46 versus a 44, a little bit of a bump there today. You like to see that. Still fear on momentum, still extreme fear on strength, has not moved for a long time. We're right at the zero line, which is still lower than we've been over the last year. Breadth continues to improve, interesting with that. Put call ratio still sitting very low in regular greed. Volatility did spike up just a little bit, but nothing crazy. Safe haven demand has neutralized with the bump that we got today. And then junk bonds still not moving at all. Moving over to the earnings calendar real quick, you can see everything's green except for Tesla, not doing so good. IBM also crushed it, beating on earnings. They were up a lot, especially with their forward guide, very, very strong there. Not super common to see IBM doing very, very well there, but they did. Everybody else doing pretty good, pretty much in line with expectations. SMCI doing pretty well there as well. Then for tomorrow, you have Apple, Microsoft, MasterCard, Thermo Fisher, Caterpillar, Comcast, Blackstone, UPS, definitely want to see how the transports are doing. Intel also coming in tomorrow. And then you have ExxonMobil, oil and gas companies here for the Friday. Moving over to the put call ratio, options still a lot. Put call ratio still very high. Put wall still 590. So still expecting to hold in this range, maybe dip slightly, but nothing crazy. Overall, slightly bullish here for the week. Moving over to the charts, we did get a little bit of a down day for the S&Ps, about 0.5%. We tested the level 603.25, fell through that level, pushed right to the next one, 599.64, touched that level and caught a little bit of a bounce, finished in the middle of the candle, inside candle. Not super great. Again, we've been sideways choppy now since the beginning of December, and we are still in the same trading range here now at the end of January. So we haven't seen a ton of movement so far. Definitely some volatility. We've been as low as 575, been as high as 610. We're kind of in the middle of that range, maybe slightly above middle. We came in, tested the zone, got a bounce. Is this going to hold? Potentially. Your level is 599. Of course, earnings tomorrow is going to dictate where this goes, but for right now, we held support, which should give you a little bit of a bias, at least back to 603. And then if 603 breaks, then 607 is your next level there. So RSI, slightly bullish, momentum, not so much. Little mixed signals there on the indicators. And then looking at the hourly chart, you can see pretty much fell through the session, tested support in here, definitely buyers coming in, defending that area. Every time we touched it, we rejected pretty powerfully. So expecting this zone to hold at that 599.64 level. Moving over to the S&Ps on the Tasty charts here, you can see we're back into bearish conditions with those big wicks to the downside. Took out the trailing stop in there around 602. Got as low as 599. Caught the bounce there. Still holding the 144 on the hourly, which is currently sitting at 601.15. So we'll see. Again, seems like it could hold. Sideways choppy. We were bearish, back to bullish, back to bearish. Does seem like you're maybe fading a little bit. If we got a rally up, lower high setup, that would give you kind of a change in structure. But for now, you have a low, higher low in here. Now you have a high, waiting to see if you get the higher high somewhere in that 607 area like we talked about on the previous charts. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see we're stuck between these two trend lines here. So we came up and touched this one. We talked about that yesterday. Went right to the trend again, rejected from it, and now we're sitting on this other trend. So you have this kind of confluence of trend lines, right? So clear, marking multiple tops in here before the breakout, retest, breakout, marking this trend here, and then this lower trend was kind of this bottom part of this grinding price action here. So very important trend lines. Interesting that we're sitting right on top of them, right in the zone. Momentum, same as the SPY, not great. We were looking for the gap fill. We didn't get the continuation here. In terms of levels, we did continue to test 519.48. We did continue to hold it on a closing basis, at least on the daily chart. And then we held up really, really well, honestly, with the earnings after hours. You can see we fell only 13 cents after hours on the NASDAQ. So holding up really, really well there. Definitely better than I would have expected. And then looking at the hourly chart, doesn't look super great here. You have the rally up, hit the trends, break down, tried to throw some wicks to the trends again, rejected a little bit from there. So support still 519, still have the 200 in there, which is relevant at 518.60. As long as this zone holds and we continue to see these kind of bounce price action out of here, then I would be looking for that 226.50 area. But if this structure in here breaks, obviously 514.92, almost 515 in there, and then the next level 509 for me. So right now you have kind of a consolidation trading range. with a clear bottom in place until we see that structure break down. Moving over to the Tasty charts here for the Qs. Again, back into bearish conditions. We were bearish here, bullish here, back to bearish, and now we're seeing a little bit of a bounce. See how it plays out. Still holding those shares from yesterday. Still holding some covered calls going into tomorrow. We'll see. Current resistance is up here at 525.73. Want to see it push to that zone. Want to see it push through there, but you can see ATR bands flat, lower bands actually trending down just slightly. So sideways consolidation. If the structure breaks, like I said, that's probably going to push this a little bit lower. I'm sure the medium time frames are also a little bit bearish coming off of this bigger down move here. Right now we're waiting to see, is this going to hold continuation, or is this the lower high that we were potentially looking for up here? It just came early and now we're going to sell from here. Those are the two scenarios I am looking for. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell was down just a smidgen, 0.2% on the day, 44 cents. Still holding the level at 226, down a smidgen. After hours, we're actually up about 50 cents. Interesting. We'll see if that continues into tomorrow. We're at the level there, continues to hold. We did throw a big wick to a new relative low. You can see the low of day was 224.58. Previous day was 225.18, so technically it was a slightly lower low, but on a closing basis, we didn't do it. Looks bullish after hours. And then the Dow, slightly negative as well. Didn't even touch the level. Momentum fading, RSI still fading a little bit, looking for the retest of the SMA. Moving over to the Mag 7, inside candle, after hours holding up really well. Like to see it. This is about as good as I could have hoped for here. Momentum's flat, RSI still flat. So this is good. This is what I wanted to see. Would like to see it kind of get a continuation into the zone here. We've talked about that before, but for now, want to see it continue to hold through earnings, get through this kind of consolidative reorientation phase, and then once we get that, hopefully we can see a reacceleration. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was up about 0.5%, momentum bullish, RSI bullish, continues to look good, still looking for that 241 level. Everything looks good there. You did have a huge gap down, hit VWAP, and then rally through, but overall structurally still good on a closing basis there. And then looking at Microsoft, obviously a dumpster fire on the day, down to 418 after hours, all the way back down to these lows from mid-January. So that took out all of this rally here, went to 447 or so from that low, and now we've nearly round-tripped the move. 413 is once again the support. So we're back into this consolidation range that we've been in for seemingly ever at this point. We got here in March of 24, and we've been here for nearly a year as we start to get into February of 25. So same trading range. Microsoft continues to trade within a tight range. Now it'll be interesting to see if we get a follow through tomorrow, or if we see any kind of reversal. Jumping over to the 12-hour chart just to show you that candle, very, very big, right to these lows here. Momentum bearish, RSI obviously bearish, not quite oversold. Based on this kind of a candle, this kind of a reversal, you would expect lower lows in my opinion. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla was down about 2.25%. Touched the level almost at 384.29. Touched the 55 again. Overall, though, big jump to 405. Almost back to that 21 EMA. Everyone's excited about full self-driving. They're going to try to launch it here in Texas within the next couple of months from what I was reading. So that's going to be a major driver. That is full self-driving, unmonitored. They're already practicing it inside their facilities, but now they're going to try to launch it in Texas. Absolutely a massive move here for Tesla. If that becomes a thing, Tesla is going to go much, much higher in my opinion. And then looking at NVIDIA, down day here, 200 continues to be support on a closing basis. 122.14 is that level. Moving over to Amazon, down a little bit, about $1, nothing crazy. Momentum starting to fade a little bit. It's been a pretty decent run here after the breakout here. Retest continuation, broke the level. Still looks good, honestly. It's probably just a short-term pullback as we get closer to their earnings. And then Alphabet up slightly, just 11 cents, still in the same consolidation range. Been here for a while. Basically as flat as everything else, nearly 2 months now. It's up a smidgen after hours, piggybacking off of some of the results there. Again, trend resistance up here around 204, 205, which is still a decent move from current price, but I would definitely be looking to take profits if we got into that zone, as we have rejected from there basically 3 times, almost 4 times. Moving over to Meta popping about $15 after hours, all-time highs, everything continuing to look amazing there. Momentum, RSI, everything's still super super strong. We've been talking about it for a while now. Basically continues to march higher seemingly every day, right? So you had a very slight consolidation here, breakout, retest, continuation, very powerful. Everything looks very strong here still. Trend resistance, if you could argue it's there, 750, somewhere in there maybe. But for now, still looks very good. And then you got Broadcom popping after hours off the back of everything else there. So Broadcom went from 206 to 216, so up about $10 there. After holding this 55 EMA on the daily chart, based on this move, I would look for a move to here, around 229, 230 maybe, somewhere in here. Might find some resistance at this consolidation low, but for now, seeing a little pop there on Broadcom. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples was positive a quarter, discretionaries down a quarter. Pretty much unchanged on the day, same thesis here. We did get back above 78.88 here for staples, so we're holding that level now. If that continues to hold, that could be interesting. We didn't see any continuation after the down candle the previous day. No gap fill there either, so that's kind of a bullish indicator for me. I like this here. 78.88 is the level. It's up a smidgen after hours. Same with discretionaries, up about $1 after hours, still at this trend. Momentum's flat, RSI slightly bullish. If it can continue higher here, the trend resistance is 236.90, 237, somewhere in there. Moving over to breadth. Breadth has actually stepped down for 2 days in a row now on 20 and 50-day breadth. Keep in mind that the fear and greed breadth is the 200-day breadth, which has continued to improve, but these shorter time frames starting to see a little bit of selling here. We were at peak levels, starting to see some sells, momentum fading, RSI breaking below the SMA on the 20. Interesting to see that. Definitely a warning sign for me. Usually when you start to see these short-term pullbacks in breadth, price does go with it. Again, in the short term, these can last just a couple of days here, maybe a couple of weeks. You can see this rally up here, end of December, all the way through the first 3 weeks of January. So 3-week move here. Are we going to get a little bit of a retracement? Potentially, it's starting to show some signs of that. 50-day, same thesis here, 2 steps down, momentum fading. RSI has not retested the SMA yet, but doesn't look super great. Moving over to the dollar threw some wicks to the upside and then is still below 108 as your resistance. Right now, you got about a minute or two until it closes. Looks like we're going to close below it, still acting as resistance. Momentum continues to step to bullish on the daily chart, hourly chart, sideways choppy at best, slightly bearish at worst. So mixed signals. After the FOMC, definitely some volatility through some wicks. All of that got rejected. So I would be a little bit bearish here, especially if we saw 107.87 break. Then I would be looking for a bigger move down to these previous lows here, maybe back down to 106. Moving over to bonds just for a second here. Bonds basically unchanged, down 8 cents on JNK. TLT was down 18 cents, but after hours we popped right back up to 88.18, so it's up 17 cents, basically unchanged if you include that after hours price action. Still waiting for this to curve up, still think that it's going to do it. Still like bonds here, so especially TLT. JNK does look a little bit more extended, but I do like TLT in here as this continues to round out. We start to see those reversal trends. You got the 9 sitting above the 21, sitting above VWAP. I would expect this to get bought up, even if we did see any kind of pullbacks, at least in the short term for now. Still waiting to see this kind of neckline. You can see left shoulder head, right shoulder-ish. Still hasn't really closed above that level. I would be looking for a close above 88.28, and we are very close to that. We'll see if we get it tomorrow. Moving over to volatility. Volatility was slightly positive. We are still right on that trend. It threw a wick up, rejected from there. Really no change to the thesis, still sitting here. If it breaks tomorrow, that would be great. If it holds in here, we'll probably see a little bit of selling. The fact that it's still here means there's still some volatility in markets, so do keep that in mind. Momentum continues to look a little bullish. RSI basically exactly neutral there at a 49.84. Moving over to my accounts, I made a little bit of money, so you like to see that, especially with red across the board here for markets. Overall, not a bad day. I was pretty patient. I didn't make a ton of moves. We did have some breakdowns, and I kind of bit into that a little hard, but I was able to adjust. Overall, still not bad, especially considering the huge move down that we had on the week. Still pretty negative on the week, but I am still doing okay here. In terms of positions, like I said, I bit a little hard on that move down on the IWM, so I'm at 225 for $1.70. Right now, we're basically at my max profit, 226.80. 226.70 is my max profit, so might end up having to roll that out. It's interesting to see this doing really well after hours, especially with the market breadth that we're seeing. Market breadth rolling down a little bit. I wonder if that's going to affect markets tomorrow. We'll see. But for right now, it looks very, very strong, and I am in the money definitely. So might have to roll this out to the end of the week. Might be patient there. IWM might have to move it around. And then for the Qs, held my position 521 for tomorrow. $4 credit on each of those. It's in a little bit of a profit right now. I don't know how much of that profit is real, but either way, max profit on this would be 425.28. We'll see if I hold that through tomorrow. I'm a little bit concerned about Apple. I think Apple might be not so great, which could absolutely drag down markets. But with how little we moved so far based on earnings, I'm kind of leaning towards I might leave it on. So we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. If markets start to break down ahead of earnings, definitely going to shift out. But for now, looks a little bit neutral to bullish, especially with how strong the Qs look through the earnings and how strong the Russell looks after hours. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the FOMC or any of the earnings. What do you think of markets now post major earnings as we head into the rest of them? Are the markets going to shift around, or is this going to be a bit of a nothing burger for earnings? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.